and this one is about balancing sustainability with high growth. It's also interesting because we've got an extremely uh, top high-level panel with us. We have the senior most and most brilliant secretaries of the government of India with us. Uh, so since the morning, we've been talking about India's role, which is evolving in economy, an Indian economy preparing to emerge as the third largest one in the world. At the same time, we've said that we cannot lose focus in ensuring sustainable development also keeps pace so that no citizen is left behind. And that's the theme of the discussion here. The G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration emphasizes the need for accelerating progress on sustainable development goals. And the action plan for 2030 focuses on a few things like harnessing data and digital technologies for development, investing in gender equality, eliminating hunger and malnutrition, and of course, delivering quality education. So in this session, we'll hear from the topmost policymakers and administrators in the government the role that each of these stakeholders can play to take this agenda forward. And I'm really delighted to have three secretaries here. To my left, Sri Rohit Singh Ji, Secretary, Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, Government of India. Then after Ishtiaq, we have Sri Apurva Chandra Ji, Secretary, Ministry of Information, Broadcasting, Government of India. And to his left, Sri Srinivas, Secretary, Ministry of Minority Affairs, Government of India. The moderator, of course, is Ishtiaq, who's the forum co-chair and also the past president of PAFI and also the managing director, Policy and Government Affairs for Abbott. And finally on the dais is my colleague Rohan Mishra, Director, Government Relations and Public Affairs, Coca-Cola, who will sum up the session at the end. So without much ado, let's get started. Over to you, Ishtiaq.
You know, as a student, I was very bad in maths. I was just trying to do numbers. 89 batch, 88 batch, 89 batch, 35 years, 34 years, 34 years. So roughly over 100 years of experience in public policy making between the three secretaries who are sitting at the podium right now. And this 100 years, by the way, I mean, we know Rohit sir, Apurva sir, and Mr. Srinivas sir, as the current hat that they are wearing right now as secretaries to the Government of India. But behind that is, I can tell you, if you really look at the 17 SDG goal, they have worked practically across all of them in their career. They've worked in healthcare, they've worked in public distribution, they've worked in labor, they've worked in institutions like the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy for National Academy for Administrator. And to really have that panel here in this evening is a privilege for PAFI and all of us. And I know that Secretary's panel has always been something which is very, very well awaited and sought after. The theme behind this entire panel discussion is around the Sustainable Development Goal. If you look at the 17 goals, the first 6 being the people-oriented, prosperity-oriented, planet-oriented, peace-oriented, and at the end of the day, the last goal is the most important, which is where we all are here, which is the partnership between all stakeholders and the interconnectivity of all the goals. Devashish talked about the G20 Delhi Declaration, the leadership position that India has taken. It's actually fascinating to see a country which is growing at such a breakneck speed as far as the economy is concerned, most populous country. I mean, sometimes I really wonder, and my first question to you is, 1.4 billion people without any major challenge, and that too, I mean, if we really look at last few years when we've had COVID lockdown, we've had issues with the monsoons and a whole lot of other things. How does it really pan out? And I mean, how do you do that job as a Secretary of Food and Public Distribution, if I may ask?
Right, it's a humongous task, and just the numbers are astronomical. And I remember when I was in school in Varanasi, we were being told about the sizes of the country, My geography teacher said once that we produce one Australia every year. So, that has stuck in my mind since then. And size is an issue, but what we have is a very structured, proven system of procurement, storage, and distribution. So it's not the best possible. There's always some scope for improvement, but it's been working well. And the challenges are sometimes, in terms of sub-geographies, where it is being produced and where it is being consumed. This gives rise to new challenges, and this phenomenon is very specific to India. I'll give you a couple of examples. All the mustard is produced in Rajasthan, my cadre, but all the mustard oil is consumed in eastern part of the country. Rajasthanis don't eat mustard oil. So then what do? You have to produce that, you have to store and transport. And, many things like that. Pulses. India produces, 275 lakh tons of pulses. We consume 280 lakh tons. So there is a gap of 5. So it is logical to think that we import 5 lakh tons. No, we import 25 lakh tons because the composition of production and the composition of consumption is different. So these are the challenges, but I think technology has come to a great help. And I'll give a small example that the trucks of FCI, the route that take is now optimized through an intelligent algorithm, which is now we're doing in IIT Delhi. And we realize that by using that, we are saving to the extent of 15-17% in terms of distribution cost. So innovations have to keep happening, and if we don't innovate, we will not be able to handle these challenges because these challenges are enormous and we need to constantly innovate.
So while I was traveling to one of the villages in Bundelkhand region in MP, and I was talking to the sarpanch of the village, and he actually gave me something which I was absolutely unaware of, and I didn't realize how important that piece of information was. He said something like 35 government schemes typically are meant for a village at that point in time. There are state government schemes, there are central government schemes, and these schemes are like, mother and child, healthcare, women empowerment, development, education, health and sanitation, all of that. Now, one of the most important, I think we didn't realize, but one of the most important, ingredient to accomplish the sustainable development goal for 2030 is to actually have that information symmetry, that what is being done and what is being doled out to the people at large, they get aware of it, and they know that this is their right and this is being developed for them, and therefore they have access to that. So your role as a secretary INB, it must be a very tough task to really take each of those information right to the last mile of India. How do you do that, sir?
As you said, Ishtiaq, yes, it is a humongous task. And the number of schemes which you said was 35 at that point of time must have crossed 200. I think it has crossed 300 now, because the Niti Aayog in between had done the study. The number of schemes is more than 300. Making the people aware of their rights and making them apply for what is legitimately theirs, that itself is a challenge. This availability of the internet and ubiquitous use of mobile phone, that has made it easier, but still there are a lot of people who are not aware of what is legitimately theirs. And in this, there are some challenges of language also, because most of our websites and other things, if you look at it, they are mostly in English, some in Hindi, and very few in the regional languages, which again is a very, very important issue, because people in our country, only very, very few people like us, we are conversing in English. We are a minority of 0.1 or 0.2%, because I know about the English news channels. The listenership of English news channels is 1/10 of the Hindi news channels, and the listenership of all the news channels is 1/10 of the entertainment channels. So English news channel is 1/100th of any entertainment news channel. So that way it is much limited. The use of communication in regional languages, that is extremely important. We feel that we have done our job if we put something on a website. But then how many people access that website? That itself is a issue. Of course, it is much better than earlier, because earlier it was lying in some file or in some document which is pasted at some notice board which nobody really comes and reads. Because the earlier system when we joined service was that any notice is put up at the notice board of the tehsil and the collector's office, and people are expected to come and read it, which never used to happen. Now, dissemination is there, but still there are challenges because people don't really go to the website. They don't know what website to access, what portal to access, and the language, as I mentioned, that itself is an issue. So taking these schemes to the people, that is very important, and that is the job of the government as well as people like you also, to make the people aware. In that context, recently what has been envisaged is a Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, which is a 2-month campaign to cover all the gram panchayats of the country, 2.5 lakh gram panchayats of the country, where IEC vans would be visiting each and every gram panchayat to carry the message. And the Prime Minister strongly believes in saturation coverage of schemes. So the schemes that nobody should be left behind. And that is the idea, that we take these vans to these villages, also to urban centers, to bring the message that these schemes are there for you, to make the people aware, and then give out success stories that these people have benefited from these schemes. So you should also take benefit, and everybody should be aware. So this sort of coverage, that all the gram panchayats, all the urban centers of the country are getting covered at the same time within a 2-month period, I think it is a unique program. It is going to be launched sometime in November. Let's see how that works, because there are always challenges in taking the message to the people.
One of the, not one, in fact, the real mantra of the government actually is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, the Prime Minister's name. Started with Sabka Saath, and Sabka Vikas got added, and then Sabka Vishwas got added to that. You actually represent a ministry which is carved out from social justice, and really it really embodies Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. We know that India cannot be a developed nation despite all our economic growth unless it really becomes an inclusive growth. An inclusive growth for every citizen of the country. So what would be your thought to really, the entire journey of India from where we are as a developing nation to the developed nation as our vision carved out? And what role do you really see for the inclusive growth of India?
Thank you. I would pick up from where Purva just stopped, where the approach of the government is about saturation. When we talk about saturation, am I clear? Yeah. All right.
Can you increase the volume a little bit?
Yeah. The approach of government
Is it okay?
is about saturation, which means leave no one behind and ensure that everybody has access to the larger opportunity that the development of the nation presents. So in this, I recall a very important and a poignant statement that was made by the Honorable Prime Minister a long time back when he was addressing some of the younger officers. He said, we should shift from this patronage culture of somebody coming from outside, having a manner, doing something for somebody else, and there is a client-patron kind of a relationship, which used to, in a way, symbolize the past. He articulated so beautifully. He said, we should move away from that old culture where you are giving a task to somebody or a responsibility to somebody or a contract to somebody. So he called it Thekedari, and move towards Bhagidari. Let everyone participate. Let everyone contribute. And in the process of contribution, it is also important that you should enable meaningful participation, which means you throw open opportunities equitably, you throw open availability of talent as well as as enable talent accretion in all the segments of population to participate and enable everyone to rise along with the nation. So this is the large thrust of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And this is, of course, we are looking at it in a very, let us say, from the perspective of people. I look at it even differently. Well, what about regional development? All of us travel a lot. With a program like Udan, you will fly into some of the remotest parts of the country. Now, I always ask myself and imagine, how is opportunity getting delivered to those of our citizens living in the remote areas? They no longer feel as disempowered. We no longer have a backward and a forward sort of a geography. So there is a geographical equity also happening. So I think the larger perspective is to how to spread the benefit of development and opportunities to grow. So this is the large approach.
Now, I'll stay with you, Mr. Srinivas. You've recently taken over your new role, but prior to this, you were at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administrators. And that is the mecca of the training and development and capacity building of what is called the backbone of India's governance structure. The bureaucrats, right from the inception of their service, they come for their mid-career training and all of that. And the audience sitting here are the one who actually interact with that section of administrator, not only at the central level, but also at the state and the district level, because this is really the structure through which anything that is conceived or planned or dreamt of as a policy typically gets executed and brought to life for the last mile. And we've also had the advantage of having you a couple of years back in one of our annual forums in your previous avatar. What would be your message to this audience here? What is the kind of cooperation or collaboration that you could think that we can have between private sector and the government at various levels? And really, make India a developed nation through that collaboration. The partnership, 17th goal of SDG that we talked about.
Thank you. I believe a large number of you are public policy professionals. So in the last few years, when I was dealing with the government side of public policy, which are the young officers and not so young officers who are at various levels of seniority, who used to come and interact with us, learn and train there, I always distinctly observed that we need to have a much larger Team India working. It is not enough to only have the government side working, government side having a certain level of information, the information asymmetry you spoke of. I think it's very important for us to have a conversation going between the private sector side of it as well as the government side of the conversation. The second very touching observation I had in the last 2 years of my experience there is that unlike our time, who all of us represent on this panel, where the senior civil service used to typically come from maybe about 12 to 15 universities, maybe around 20 large geographical positions. It could be large cities, some large districts. Today, the young civil servants who are undergoing training and who you are going to interact with come from close to 50% of the districts of this country. So this beautiful diversity that our country is now fully representative within the bureaucracy also. So you should be aware that you are talking to a set of people who know and who are living in the diversity of this country. And they have also experienced some of the difficulties that difficult geographies and challenges that our very diverse country can have. And therefore, they are much more sensitive, and I say it with a lot of responsibility than perhaps my generation was, in terms of their empathy, in terms of their responsiveness. So you should be prepared to go and meet a set of young colleagues, and I call them your colleagues on the other side, who will be responsive and who are intuitively understanding of your role. Because many of them, before having joined the service, are also and were participating in various types of jobs. Usually they have had 1 or 2 or 3 different jobs before they joined the civil service. In fact, the last 2 years, I had many young colleagues who actually set up startup companies, who sold off startups and then joined the service. And they were doing very well. In fact, there was a young gentleman. I asked him, I said, how much money did you make? You made a lot of money. I said, well, you don't need salary, you don't need pension either. So go and do good. That is the purpose with which many of them are coming. That they find that there's an opportunity that attracts them and they want to contribute. So I think you should go there with a very open frame of mind where there is immense scope for building strong relationships or doing good for the country.
The other hat that you wear is the Consumer Affairs Secretary.
Yes, sir.
SDG 11 talks about the responsible production and responsible consumption. Responsible consumption also happens when the rights of consumers are protected, and it is protected to the hilt. This morning I looked at the newspaper and saw the Consumer Affairs Department taking stock of when all of us keep traveling, and when we go to the airlines and try and book a seat, it shows that all the seats are already booked, or you have to pay a good amount of money to really get onto that. These are very small, nuanced work that typically happens from a consumer's right protection. It's an area which touches all of us, because no matter who you are a consumer at the end of the day. And protecting that right, and also striking that balance that you don't go overboard in really getting after probably the service provider or the industry or something. So that balance is interesting. So I really like to hear from you about that.
So you're right, that balance is extremely important. On the one hand, the whole of the government's philosophy is that we have to promote and catalyze ease of doing business. So on the one hand, there is ease of doing business for a lot of people who are sitting in this room, but we have to make sure that the right of consumers is also protected simultaneously. Not an easy task, easier said than done, but just taking a cue from what Srinivas said, you have to constantly engage with the industry and with the NGOs who represent the interests of the consumers, and then see how we can strike a balance. I'll give you an example. I don't know whether Virat Bhatia of Apple is sitting here, but the electronics industry came to us 1.5 years back, and they said, your labeling requirements are getting unwieldy, and we're finding it difficult. So can we do something about it? We said, yes, maybe we can do a QR code, and instead of some things which are mandatory, the rest can be in form of a QR code. But before we could do that, we had consultations with the other stakeholders, and they said, no, how will a poor consumer read this QR code? Not everybody has a phone that can scan. But then we said, if somebody is buying a 25,000 rupee plus phone, maybe he can scan. So we struck a balance, and we said, except 3 things, which is the MRP, the price, the contents of the box, and country of origin. Rest, everything on the phone box can be in form of a QR code. So we said, let's do it for a year, and let's see how it pans out in terms of striking this balance which you spoke about. It worked well. So now we extended it, have extended it forever. And now we are looking at the other FMCG and other segments where it can be used. So, things like this come to us every day, and we have to make sure that we strike a balance. In terms of what happened in today's newspapers, we have a very vibrant national consumer helpline. So about 2 years back, we used to get about 20,000 calls a month, and we realized that we were not very responsive. So we started responding in many languages. As we speak, we respond in 17 languages spoken across the country. And we asked our agents to be more friendly and have that facilitation kind of a mindset. And then the number of complaints have increased. So now I get about 1,20,000 complaints a month, which I'm not worried about. Maybe people were not coming out to complain. Then we run some kind of an algorithm through the complaints that we receive, and then we see what are the people complaining most against. And we did this, we keep doing this exercise, and we realized about a month back that in last 12 months there are 10,000 complaints against the airlines on various, it's not about pricing of the ticket. People have paid the price, whatever the airlines or the travel portal demanded. But beyond that, not getting refund after cancellation, not able to check in when the website says free web check-in and then being asked for money for every seat, having a confirmed ticket and then being denied boarding. I mean, these are the things which a normal consumer faces. So we have called the airlines 2 weeks from now and the travel portals and the NGOs, and we will say, let's see how we can resolve this. So we don't bulldoze our way through, but we would, maybe airlines have a point which we are not able to realize. Maybe there's something in the fine print which needs to be increased in terms of the font size. Maybe something else is there which we are, so unless we engage with all these stakeholders, we will not be able to protect the interests of the consumer in the right way. So our philosophy in the ministry is now that we constantly engage with the stakeholders and let's see how we can come to a best possible solution.
Coming back to you, Mr. Chandra, I mean, you've also, prior to this role, you were Department of Defense Production. Given the world scenario today and the geopolitical upheaval that we have witnessed in the past few months, we were looking at the Russia-Ukraine war, and then now we aren't here. Is it? You guys need to fix it. I mean, I can't get close. Is it better? Okay. So, you know, I mean, coming to your role in the defense production department, given the geopolitical upheaval that we are all witnessing last few months, we've seen, you know, the Middle Eastern crisis. Prior to that, the Russia-Ukraine war, which is, you know, much longer than what was expected, and we don't know where is the current crisis heading. What do you really see the role of defense preparedness, improving the production, indigenization of our defense production, which is a new, I would say, initiative that the government has taken in the past few years. Our import dependence has come down. What would be your thought on that?
Yeah. Actually, I was EG Acquisition in the Department of Defense, and I was responsible for all the procurements of defense equipment, whether it is Army, Navy, Air Force, for almost 3 years. And as you said, it was a very challenging task because the security of the nation is paramount. What the services want, you have to make it available on time, and so that they are well equipped to defend our borders. At the same time, we would like our indigenization to happen so that our dependence on imports is reduced. And for that, as was mentioned by both by Rohit and Srinivas, we have to work with the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, people like you, who are the manufacturing base of the country. And we had extensive consultations with those in the defense manufacturing ecosystem on what are our requirements, how we can procure those, and we had a defense acquisition policy where the highest priority was given to those to indigenously designed and manufactured equipment. It was a category called IDDM, that is indigenously designed, developed and manufactured. And a direct import was the last 6th category. So anything in between, whether if the foreign manufacturer comes to India, sets up a plant, and starts supplying, or he transfers to some Indian company, or he as a joint venture with the Indian company, all those were categories in between. So in case there is a company which is indigenously designing, developing and manufacturing something, then we don't go to the next category at all. So it becomes a sort of a reserved item for that particular category. And that led to a lot of indigenization. As you can see that now India has started exporting defense items also. It has become one of the exporting countries also. And a support for the Indian industry in terms of the policy that we allow them a time to develop their product, give them trial orders so that the products can be tested. The army, the armed forces also get confidence in the product which is being developed. All those phases one has to go through. And then now, as you can see, 4 lists of items have come out, which have put almost 2,000 items on the negative list of imports. That means that these items will not be imported under any circumstances, and they will be sourced from domestic producers only. So that is a continuous process of working with the industry, understanding their needs, responding to their needs through policy, and giving them the leeway so that they can come up with products and also instill a sense of confidence in the armed forces.
Okay, one of the, can you guys hear? Okay. One of the purpose of PAFI is to actually develop trust and confidence amongst all stakeholders. This is one of the 4 charters of PAFI, and Ajay in the morning talked about that. Mr. Srinivas, and I'll actually go to all my panelists. If I were to ask you, look at 3 important things that this audience needs to do to develop that trust with the policymaker, what would be those 3 priorities in your mind? You get some time to think over it.
Yeah, I think the first and the foremost element which I would strongly recommend to the colleagues in the audience is to think like public policy professionals and not maybe as a group that is articulating or canvassing or advocating a particular point of view. So there is a certain public policy ethic that should be evolved and developed as a part of this profession. So this profession has to represent that a professional who is speaking on behalf of an industry or on behalf of a certain point of view is advocating a point of view on the basis of a professional ethic also, in addition to facts, etc., that we marshal. That's the first thing. The second is to also, I think, communicate effectively, understanding the sensitivities and sensibilities of the recipient, let us say in this case the government. What is it that the government is trying to hear? Because government obviously would be looking at certain other aspects that you might not consider so important from your client perspective. It could be aspects of inclusivity, it could be aspects of affordability, it could be aspects of accessibility, or whatever. So if we were to also bring in this consideration, this dimension into your conversation, it will enhance what you're trying to say. That is the second dimension. And the third perhaps is to be, I think, honest. Honesty can be very transparent and communicates beautifully. And speaking for myself, I should not be talking down to all of you. And maybe I will say this with a little bit of trepidation because it can sound somewhat radical, is on my side, where we sit, all of us. We also have an immense responsibility because we are all sitting in monopoly position. Nobody can do what we do. And we are mandated to do what we do. So any kind of a dilly-dallying, any kind of a dithering, any kind of an indecision would be unacceptable from our side. So if you are able to also strengthen our ability to decide by marshalling adequate facts, by also marshalling adequate arguments, also giving access to information perhaps that's not available within the limited government ecosystem that we might be dealing with, would be doing another great service. Because I strongly believe that this entire aspect of public policy formulation and implementation is the core of governance, whether we deliver from the government side or from the private side. I think we should learn to work together very well.
I said one of the charters of PAFI is to create trust between different stakeholders. For this audience, what is your expectation, the top three expectation that you think will really create that trust between the policymakers and the policy advocates?
One is when the policy advocate comes to the policymaker, they should be talking of the not of an individual case, but rather an industry as a whole. It is much better when we talk in policy terms, and when we talk, when a case is made out, it should not be such that it is couched in such a way that it finally benefits only one person. If it is a larger this thing, then it is always easier, and then we are talking of a larger legitimate goal, which we pursue as policy, and we always like to really interact and take care of that. An instance, since we are talking of defense, like one instance I would like to narrate, because we were making bulletproof trucks at that point of time. And there was an indigenous manufacturer. They said that we have indigenized the gearbox of that truck. Now our policy at that point of time was that if it is indigenized, then first of all, we went through technical trials, which took 6 months. Then the most technical trial is fine, whether it suits the purpose or not. But thereafter, what we did was that because it is already tendered out and there is a cost, let's say there is a cost of 10 crore the truck is costing 2 crore rupees. Then we went through the financials, that whether the cost should be reduced because the gearbox is being indigenized. And after 1 year exercise, we came to the conclusion that for 1,000 trucks, we should reduce the cost by, it was a 1,600 crore order, that we should reduce it by 4 crore. And during that period, 1 year, that army is losing out on those trucks. The person is also waiting for his orders and all that. So that as a policy, then we changed that in case of any indigenization, we will not go through the cost at all. So that in case that serves the national purpose that we are indigenizing a particular product, and we will not go through the cost. So that is a larger issue which we are tackling rather than an individual case. So when we give a benefit also, or when we change it, then it should be on a larger perspective rather than an individual case. I think that is important.
काफी कठिन सवाल है. I wanted to use my phone to ask ChatGPT, but since we are under the cameras, so I couldn't do that. But I think to build trust, the most important thing is empathy and to respect the other point of view, at least to listen and understand the other point of view, to put yourself in the other guy's shoes. And it's true for both sides of the table. I'm assuming that I'm on this side of the table and you are on the other side. In any system, the resources are limited, and there are too many demands on the system, whether it's financial resources, in terms of your energy to engage, and many other things. So we should always we should always look forward to a solution where, by optimizing the situation, the most of the stakeholders' interest is being served. You cannot please everyone, so please do not be under that impression that you can be, nice to everyone and then also achieve your objectives. But I think when we serve the interest of most of the stakeholders in a positive way, that builds the trust. The other thing is, we should always look at any problem or any engagement holistically, because I'll give you an example. We have this thing called IMC, which is Interministerial Committee, where 4 of us secretaries, Food, Consumer Affairs, Agriculture and Commerce, we sit every Wednesday at 5 p.m. I hope it's not Wednesday and I did not. So
This is Thursday.
We sit every Wednesday at 5 p.m. and we see how the prices are behaving, and do we need to take recourse or to intervene in terms of import, export duties, releasing from the buffer, procuring more, selling more. And always in those meetings, this is my second year, almost I'm completing 2 years in this assignment. The agriculture will always, of course, rightly so, will try and protect the interest of the farmer. And I have the responsibility to try and protect the interest of the consumer. They may not always be aligned. farmer needs more compensation for the produce, more remuneration. I need to keep the prices low. But despite heated exchanges and heated arguments, we do, at the end of that meeting, come to some kind of a solution where both interests are being served adequately, if not completely. So I think the two things of having the empathy. So I have a lot of empathy for Secretary Agriculture when he fights with me, and he also has a lot of empathy. So we do come to the amicable solutions. Yeah, without bloodshed.
Thank you. I'll quickly open it up for the audience for your questions. If any one of you, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am from the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, professor and executive dean. Name is Naresh Singh. The question I have is, when we try to balance sustainability and growth, we seem to be taking action at largely symptomatic problems. This morning, one panelist indicated that the unique aspect of this civilization is that we recognize the inherent link between humans and nature. No other civilization seems to grasp that well. On the other hand, most of the panelists are looking at the developed world and looking at 20K GDP per capita, investment in technology, growth, and so on. We don't seem to be bringing in that civilizational ethic, that philosophical base that India has almost a unique opportunity to bring in when it seeks to balance growth as well as sustainability. So can we ask the three secretaries to comment on whether this is possible? How do we bring in this civilizational ethic in the public policy process?
I'm taking it first because, it's not a good idea to take it third. So, I'm just kidding. So, for the circular economy to happen and prosper, it would take three to tango: the consumer, the producer, the industry, and the regulator. Now, all three have to be aligned, and it's not a zero-sum thing. All three can be aligned in terms of their interests. And I would, go back to what Prime Minister said in terms of mission life. Life is lifestyle for environment. And you alluded to the civilizational thing. I think it's related to that. Unless as consumers, we adopt a lifestyle which is aligned to environment, things are not going to happen the way we want them to happen. And I'll tell you a little thing that we are doing in our ministry for that. We are very actively pursuing, much to the detriment of interest of some of the people sitting in this room, what we call the right to repair framework. We are telling the industry that you cannot have products with planned obsolescence. You can't make a phone for 2.5 years. If I, as a user, want to use it for 10 years, I should have an ecosystem which has avenues to get it repaired easily, repaired not at an exorbitant cost. And I'm very happy to share that when we started, and we started with Apple, because we thought, I hope Bharat is gone, because we thought that, this is the most difficult customer. So if you start with the most difficult guy, maybe everybody will come on board. And it did happen. I have a portal called Right to Repair. You can go and have a look. As we speak, over the last 6 months, we have brought in 37 large companies to align with our. So what we are doing there, we are saying we targeted on 4 sectors: the white goods, the electronics, the agriculture implements, and one more I'm forgetting, energy maybe. And then we said for all the products being used by consumers in these 4 segments, the availability of spares, repair. We talked to automobile company. We said, if you are discontinuing with a model, then at least the serviceability and repair has to happen, because the consumer, this is not US, consumer cannot just go to the junkyard and junk it away. So right to repair is one of the ways in which mission life is being supplemented. And of course, there are many other things which need to happen in parallel. For example, you say, get rid of this plastic, then what do you use? So if you have a biodegradable plastic, who decides that this plastic is biodegradable? How will the regulators know? So we have an organization under our ministry called BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. We pushed them last year that you come up with standards of biodegradable plastic, because unless you do that, how will the industry conform to that? So these are some things which we keep doing. Sorry if I've taken more time. Thank you very much.
I will give a slightly different take on growth with sustainability because I have been Principal Secretary Industries of Maharashtra for 4.5 years. Yes. And there I looked at it from the industrial perspective. So while we must protect the environment and growth with sustainability is absolutely essential, but our rules, the way we implement them, they have to have some logic, they have to be industry friendly. I'll give two instances of Maharashtra, which I quote almost, wherever I get the chance. One is that there was a company called Schindler. We are all aware of Schindler lifts and escalators. They set up a plant. They invested almost 500 crores in Pune. They took a plant from our MIDC, Maharashtra Industry Development Corporation, and set up a plant. The plant was ready to operate. But the consent to operate was not given. It was a non-polluting plant, purely an engineering manufacturing this thing, because it was found that it is 1978 meters from a river instead of 2000 meters, which was required as per whatever the rules were at that time. So pollution was not a concern whether it is polluting the water or not. It is only the distance that it is 1978 meters and not 2000 meters. There was another plant set up by Perkins, which is a Caterpillar subsidiary, again in MIDC complex, even on land which was given by us. They constructed the plant because permissions were given, but then later on it was found that they made more than 20,000 square meter. For making more than 20,000 square meter, you required environmental clearance. And at that point of time, there was no clearance body available in Maharashtra, but then an FIR was lodged, some people were arrested, and the plant was not allowed to operate again for a year or so. So these sort of things should not happen when we are looking for growth but also sustainability.
Music to our ears, sir. What you've said just now is music to the ear for everybody who's sitting. Your last comment, sir, before we...
Well, I'm not sure what I should be saying, but I'll endorse what both my colleagues said. And I'll tell you a story, because it's about civilization. One of the current hobbies, what my wife and I have, is we are currently walking around 3,700 kilometers. So it's called the Narmada Parikrama. We started walking in Amarkantak. So we've done about 200 odd kilometers. We walk along the river Narmada. The rule is very simple. You keep Narmada to your right. The beauty of it is you interact with a wide array of extraordinary individuals. All are citizens. So there was this very young man we met in our 10th day of our journey. It was very hot that afternoon. There was a young boy who was walking very briskly. So I started chatting with him. I said, what are you doing? He said, sir, I'm studying BA. I said, okay. What BA? He said, politics, political science. I said, okay. Now he's in the middle of Baiga land, okay? There was absolutely no chance for any kind of a job in political science. I said, otherwise, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a fisherman. I said, why are you studying political science? He said, sir, fishing, agriculture, ye bhi to business hai. I have to learn to live in the modern world. So he's killing himself. So the point I was making, going back, that our people, our civilization makes its accommodations. We have to learn to build partnerships. We have to learn to build the ecosystem and enable the spread of opportunity everywhere. So when I experience that, I think our future is not only sustainable, it's extraordinarily bright. So this is my own optimism I want to share with you.
Thank you, sir. On that note of optimism, I know we are running short of time. We have the next session ready. You can have an offline conversation when we go back. Sorry about that. May I request Rohan for you to conclude the session and deliver the...
Sure. Will do. Very difficult to summarize 100 years of administrative experience, but three quick things. I think the first one, technology as a great leveler and innovation as a catalyst. I think that becomes extremely critical. Generating awareness and rights and localizing communication, much like our national consumer helpline in 17 languages, I think is extremely critical for a country with vagaries like India. And moving from financial inclusion to inclusive growth and moving away, which I thought was very powerful, from a culture of patronage, I think is extremely critical. Really, from the doyens of communities, computing, and consumer affairs, on behalf of Puffy, thank you very, very much for your time and valuable insights. Thank you, Dev, for the introduction, and thank you to my former boss and always mentor, Ishtiyaq, for steering a great panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's why you need to recruit good people.
Thank you, sir.